Skull and Bones is Ubisoft's venture back into a swashbuckling pirate world, and the last time that Ubisoft had a game based around pirates was Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which came out in 2013, and I have a really interesting story about that, which I will go over later. Skull and Bones was initially revealed in 2017, and for me this game looked fantastic, as I personally loved the naval combat from Black Flag, and they seemed to both play fairly similarly. After this reveal, Ubisoft announced a beta for that version of the game, which never took place, but it was slated for a 2018 release, but come 2018, Skull and Bones got pushed back even further to 2019 with another beta which still didn't happen. When the game was shown off, it was purely naval combat. Now, this is apparently not the case, as Skull and Bones is allegedly going to go for a complete overhaul in terms of gameplay. So far, we've seen an open world PvPvE mode as well as a 5v5 mode, and so far that's all that's been seen. This game has now had 3 creative directors, which makes me very uncertain about Skull and Bones and its potential future. Now, on my little dive through the internet, I came across a very interesting article from the website Kotaku. And in this article, they discussed how the original concept for Skull and Bones was actually a Black Flag expansion, DLC or update that was set to release 1 year after Black Flag did. Ultimately, however, this DLC for Black Flag, or as you and I now know it, Skull and Bones, set on a journey of its own and became sort of an open world MMO. And now the original title for this game was Black Flag Infinite, much like the Assassin's Creed Infinite game that has been rumoured and leaked and everything like that, but I'm pretty sure there's no correlation between the two. But eventually it just became Skull and Bones and just started to do its own thing. And so here's the question, what did happen to Skull and Bones and where is it today, as it's past 2019 and the game is still yet to release, but it is said to be released between April 2022 and March 2023. After the E3 reveal of the game in 2017, as well as a more polished look at the game in 2018, many have said that the game we know as Skull and Bones either didn't actually exist, much like the fake Anthem gameplay demos, or that the game could have actually been released in 2019 and it still would have just evolved over time, much like Sea of Thieves or even No Man's Sky, as new features were rolled out for both of those games over time. And to be honest, Skull and Bones has had an insane amount of time to get things right and sorted out, having 4 delays in just 3 years. Many current and former Ubisoft employees have acknowledged that the game has had a troublesome development period, saying that Ubisoft's teams have never actually had one clear vision for the game, and instead that there have actually been multiple reboots and refreshes to the project, as no one really knew what the hell they were doing with this very ambiguous new IP. It appears that Ubisoft have really got their hearts set on Skull and Bones releasing, as apparently Ubisoft have poured over $120 million into this title already, and the longer that Ubisoft wait to release the game, the more money it's going to cost the studio. By this point, it appears that Ubisoft really want to push out this game as quickly as possible. They've already delved into the live service model with Assassin's Creed, and so it's no surprise that they are going to try it again with Skull and Bones. And this is especially true as live service games are becoming more important and present in the gaming industry, with developers all around the world trying to get a slice of that good live service pie. One point to bring up that is very interesting is that the Singapore government, in exchange for generous subsidies, demands that Ubisoft Singapore must release brand new IPs in the coming years, and it really does appear that that clock is slowly ticking away. With production starting during the development of Black Flag, there is no doubt in my mind that the teams at Ubisoft are getting very bored with this project. Because imagine working on a game, or just any project in fact, and barely have anything to show for it. Hopefully Skull and Bones can make its way out of development hell, but even if it did, I'm not too sure many people even remember this title. It's very much forgotten. The version of Skull and Bones that was shown in 2017 was meant to be Rainbow Six Siege but with boats, and I'm really unsure how that would work. But come 2018, Ubisoft had other plans in mind, because as seen in their 2018 demo of the game, they showed off a new mode called Hunting Grounds, which would have been very similar to The Division's Dark Zones, where you can kill other players, find loot hideouts, and also take on stronger and more difficult AI. And I would have really thought by this point that Ubisoft would have had at least a clear vision on what the game Skull and Bones was going to be, but They really didn't, and sadly in 2019, the game changed once again. This time taking the direction of the game and focusing it on more survival aspects, like from Rust or even Ark Survival Evolved. As in addition to the base mechanics like looting, sailing and fighting, there were also resource management being in the talks of being added to the game, such as crafting and trading. And also increasing stakes for dying, so perhaps you would lose more loot upon death, but we're not too sure at the moment. And it's really insane to think how much Skull and Bones has changed in such a short period of time, and it's basically been a new game every year, which must have been so taxing on the development team, and my heart goes out to them. And even in 2020, the game changed once again, but sadly there are little to no details about this version of the game, so we're just gonna have to wait and see if Ubisoft release some more footage. With all of these development changes, it wasn't even just the actual game that was getting changed over time, but also the people working on the title, as many questions were posed to the leads for this project like, do you play as the boat or do you play as an actual character? And this is the most concerning thing for me, as if a development team has to ask these types of questions this late into a development cycle, then I have a big feeling that this game is going to be a humongous mess when it eventually releases. Before I also forget to mention, by 2017 to 2018, the teams at Ubisoft were tasked with allowing players to go on land and explore islands. And now maybe these probably would have been hub worlds where you just customized your ship, your character and perhaps trade. However, I don't think that they would have been as extensive as the cities seen in Black Flag. This raised big problems as the team working on Skull and Bones only had assets for water, the boats, but nothing for land apart from islands that were untraversable in all other builds seen of the game. And apparently it was problems like these that made the dev teams lose 6 months to a year worth of development time, which is crazy. All of these issues really raise big questions about the future of Skull and Bones and what it will eventually shape out to be, whether that be a success or a shipwreck. Pun intended. This article from Kotaku really does shed light on many of the issues that not just the game has, but the developing team are having as well. And not to mention that this current pandemic is likely the reason why the game has faced even more delays internally, but you know, Skull and Bones is no stranger to the word delays. By this point, I am very unsure how I feel about Skull and Bones, as with all the changes over the years, it's very hard to determine which version of the game I should be excited for. And you know, there's no point delving too deep into one version of the game if it could all be stripped away and rebooted in another couple of months. And so I'm really not having any expectations for Skull and Bones anymore, as it could just be a total mess come the release, especially if questions are still being asked about how the game should be played, as a ship or as a pirate. So yeah, I'm not gonna get my hopes up, and I think that this is honestly the smartest move, as no matter what version of the game you end up liking, it could be gone very, very soon. And I really do feel sorry for the development team, who have most likely put all their effort in creating a game that is currently broken, in pieces, and in development hell. And even if the game does release in the predicted April 2022, March 2023 window, I'm sure that the game will still show all the cracks and telltale signs of its time in development hell. So for me, I'm having no expectations for Skull and Bones. When Ubisoft inevitably do show off a newer version of the build of the game, it will be interesting to see how much the game has changed since its initial reveal all the way back in 2017. But unfortunately, the bar for Skull and Bones has now been put so low that even the game releasing will be a momentous occasion for the team working on Skull and Bones, but for the consumer, I feel as though Skull and Bones is just gonna be a bit of a dud in my opinion. By this point, I just really hope that Ubisoft get their act together and decide a clear direction for Skull and Bones, because it's getting a bit ridiculous at this point, as the amount of changes since the initial reveal of Skull and Bones has fans unsure about the actual future of the game, especially on the gameplay side of things and how it compares to the original version of Skull and Bones that we saw all the way back in 2017. By this point, it would just be such a shame if Skull and Bones didn't release, especially for the development team that have been working on this game for so long. And to be honest, I'm sure that not too many people are hyping Skull and Bones up to be their most anticipated game to release. And so if the game just sails under the radar, I don't think too many people are going to be that disappointed about Skull and Bones. But by this point, we are really going to have to wait and see where Skull and Bones goes, because next year it could be a completely different game and it could have new gameplay mechanics. It could be a big mess, but we will just really have to wait and see until Ubisoft release some more footage for Skull and Bones. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, then subscribe, like, and turn on the notification button so you don't miss another upload from me. So thank you, and goodbye.